If I may, I'd like to give some examples of why managerial decisions and client relationships need to be covered by this inquiry, not just up to the 7th of February 2013, but beyond. Only last week, in IBRC board minutes released by the Minister's Department, we saw that Richard Woodhouse, who managed Mr O'Brien's loans with IBRC, was present at meetings where the sale of Siteserv was discussed. The former chairperson of IBRC said that Mr Woodhouse played no part in the decision-making process around the sale of Siteserv. In recent days, a series of documents that have come into my possession help to give a more complete assessment of issues relating to IBRC, to Siteserv and to related matters. These documents are being made available to me, to the Taoiseach, with the request that he pass them on to a judge when appointed to oversee this commission. In these documents, it shows that back in 2012, Denis O'Brien, the owner of Siteserv, had an agreement with IBRC where the bank would, I quote, would receive 92.02% of all Digicel dividends in excess of $50 million, end of quote, as part of a loan repayment agreement. In that same year, in 2012, there was a once-off dividend distribution of $300 million from Digicel. The bank, IBRC, received a scheduled payment of €150 million, which equated to 65% of the dividend distribution. The balance was then used by Denis O'Brien to pay down Bank of Ireland facility, which had been used to fund the Siteserv deal. And this was needed and was approved by the IBRC's Group Credit Committee. So, in other words, we know that IBRC sold Siteserv to Denis O'Brien. We know that Denis O'Brien had major loans with IBRC, and it seems that the terms of the loan agreement with IBRC was used by Denis O'Brien to pay down the loan that he received from Bank of Ireland to purchase Siteserv in the first instance. And there are other documents which I have seen that lead me to ask legitimate questions on the way that IBRC was run in the public interest. For example, in the documents I have seen, there are letters and documents which outline details of the Denis O'Brien's loans with IBRC, with 4 different proposals for an extension of these loans. In a letter dated on the 7th of March 2013, Denis O'Brien requested approval for a proposal to repay his facilities over a 3-year period with a schedule of capital repayments. The request was discussed by the case team with special liquidators of IBRC, and on the 17th of March an email was sent to Denis O'Brien which advised that facilities could only be extended for up to 12 months, and only then if it was considered beneficial to do so in the context of asset protection and enhancement. Minister, this was rejection number 1 for Denis O'Brien. On the 26th of April 2013, Denis O'Brien requested a formal approval to extend his facilities for 12 months to 30th of June 2014, with no recapital payments. On the 20th of May, the Group Credit Committee approved a 12-month extension, subject to a €100 million capital repayment on or before the 30th of November 2013. Minister, this was de facto second rejection for Denis O'Brien's proposals. On the 21st of June, the individual in question responded with a proposal for a 1-year extension of his loans with a capital repayment of €100 million in November 2013. This was rejected outright by the Group Credit Committee on the 4th of July 2013. Rejection number 3. The loan facility had now expired at this stage. With no new agreement in place, and with his loan facility expired since the 30th of June 2013, it appears that Denis O'Brien faced the possibility of having his loan sold to a third party with no facility in place. In August 2013, Denis O'Brien met with the case team, and at this meeting, the documents say he made it clear that he had a verbal agreement with Richard Woodhouse, who I mentioned previously in relation to the Siteserv deal, and with Michael Ainsley, which predated the liquidation of IBRC. The documents say that Denis O'Brien said that his verbal agreement allowed him to repay his loans over a 3-year period beginning in 2012. It was his view and the view of his lawyers that this verbal agreement stood, even though the bank was now in liquidation. In September, Denis O'Brien and his advisers met with a special liquidator, and at which stage they made it clear that they would not commit to any capital repayment for a 12-month extension. The documents also say that Denis O'Brien made it known through his advisers that he was not prepared to enter into the process of having his loan sold, with an expired loan facility, and so was likely to issue protective legal proceedings seeking an order for specific performance which would require the bank to honour the alleged 3-year term of his facilities. So, following these meetings and IBRC's views of the threats of legal action, Denis O'Brien made a fourth proposal to IBRC on the 10th of October 2013 for a 12-month extension with no capital repayments, the same proposal as was made as the second proposal, which was rejected, which, according to the documents I have, was approved on the 14th of November 2013. Minister, this was a loan for in excess of €315 million, with a margin interest rate of 3%, amounting to a €10 million interest per annum. The bank and special liquidators concluded that it was regrettable that it was not able to achieve consensual agreement from the borrower to maintain the expected repayment schedule by delivery of a further €100 million capital repayment, given the impending loan sale and the bank's inability to extend the facility beyond 12 months. The issues raise serious questions, Minister. How does a bank in liquidation create what is essentially a new an extended €315 million loan, which in reality is just like a new loan, which its Group Credit Committee had rejected just a number of months earlier? Why didn't IBRC place a call on the now expired loan? How did the verbal agreements between certain managers prior to liquidation outweigh the decision of the Group Credit Committee? From documents I have seen, it appears that IBRC's former Chief Executive, Mike Ainsley, along with Richard Woodhouse, made a verbal agreement with Denis O'Brien to give him an additional 3 years to pay off his loans with the bank. This is the same Richard Woodhouse who was present during the discussions of the Siteserv sale. It is clear from the documents I have seen that Mr O'Brien did not wish to have his loans sold to a third party, but instead wanted a 12-month extension in order to work out the loans himself. All of this, apart from Siteserv, took place after the 7th of February 2013. And because of the terms of reference that you're putting before us today, would not be covered by this Commission of Investigation. Minister, this is just one example why the terms of reference need to be expanded into the timeframe of the liquidation of IBRC. Let's be clear about it. This is a €315 million loan that was extended, and as I said, is the same as issuing a new loan on the basis of an apparent verbal agreement, despite its rejection on 3 separate occasions by the Group Credit Committee of a version of the same proposal. How is this not relevant to the inquiry? Yet it doesn't fall within the terms of reference of the inquiry. You only allow for transactions that existed before the liquidation and were executed afterwards to fall under the scope. But these management decisions are key.